Hello everyone, and welcome back to Translationborne. Today we're going to jump right into things by investigating the source of this laughter, and we're going to do that by knocking on the door of this house.
A night of curses. A night to remember. Wouldn't you say, friend?
So that's a simple enough set of lines, but here's a comparison with a more literal translation as usual. An inauspicious night, such a wonderful night. You think so too, don't you? And I really like this short set of lines because I feel like it captures in a nutshell something I've been talking about for several episodes. Namely, it does a great job at getting at the core meaning of what's being said. It would be very easy for a translation to get caught up on certain literal phrases here. Right from the start you have an inauspicious night, which you might also translate as an ill-omened night, or an unlucky night, or an ominous night. But I don't think any of those sound quite as natural as a night of curses. Then you have the next part of the line, which I feel like demonstrates even more flexibility. Literally, the character is remarking almost to themselves how wonderful of a night this is. Yet the official translation makes the leap from a more direct, good, or wonderful to memorable. As a result, I feel like the line still comes across as positive for the speaker, but with a little bit more sinister or ominous overtones for the player, which is exactly what this line is supposed to evoke. Then the final line is perhaps the most impressive. Not only does it take the literal, "you think so too, don't you?" and make it sound more natural by rephrasing it to, "wouldn't you say?" It also takes the casual informality of the Japanese grammar and makes it more explicit by adding the word friend. Again, consider the overall tone and purpose of this dialogue. The speaker is supposed to come across as half-crazed, the dialogue is supposed to sound kind of creepy, and the speech patterns being used are deliberately casual and perhaps overly friendly. It's only 2 lines, but I think the official translation captures all of this perfectly. If you were to hear the more literal, "an inauspicious night, such a wonderful night, you think so too, don't you?" it just wouldn't have the same impact as "a night of curses, a night to remember, wouldn't you say, friend?" And I really think this helps to display one of the great strengths of Bloodborne's translation. Now, having said that, I think it's high time we check back in on our friend the Chapel Dweller.
Oh, kind hunter. Thank you. So, that lady, you told her about this place? Well, she actually talks to me. Well, only now and then, and she don't mince words. But she's a kind one. I can tell. A good woman.
Okay, anything else?
If you find any saint survivors, well, send them along to Erden Chapel, will ya?
Will do, but in the meantime, let's go over that dialogue. Here's a more literal version of that past set of lines for comparison. "Oh, Mr. Hunter, thank you. You're the one who told that woman about this place, right? And that person, she actually spoke with me, worthless as I am. Well, I mean, only a little, but still, she's a woman, you know? She's very kind. Say, if you find a survivor in good shape again, you'll do me the favor of telling them to run over to Odin Chapel, won't you?" So, as you can probably see, that's mostly a straightforward translation, with 1 or 2 interesting exceptions. The self-deprecation that you may have noticed in the more literal version I feel like comes through in his general tone of speech. Consider how surprised he is when he utters the line, she actually talks to me. Also consider some of his previous dialogue. One of the times when he asks you to keep looking for sane survivors, he starts off by saying, "I know I shouldn't be asking you." So this is something that I think is actually pretty well accounted for. His line about Ariana not mincing her words, however, is a more puzzling addition to me. I have to wonder if it was put in there simply as a setup for the other major change. Namely, the move away from the Japanese implication that one of the things the Chapel Dweller is thrilled about is that an actual woman is talking to him. And this is another one of those occasions where I feel like this was a deliberate localization-based decision. The end result in this case is that he comes across as more of a shut-in in the Japanese version, whereas in the English he seems perhaps more insightful. Again, it can be difficult to speculate as to why this decision may or may not have been made, but it is interesting to consider the differences. That's going to have to do it for the Chapel Dweller for now, though. At this point, I think it's high time we talk to our next sane survivor. I think he may have overheard us.
What's this 2-bit nonsense you're peddling? I heard you told that wench about some shelter. Well, she's a damn fool to trust an outsider. Now why? Well, her sort's probably just fixing to feed some of your coin.
Well, I really do know about a safe place.
Alright. What crafty lies does the outsider have today? You think I'm an easy mark? Yeah? Well, give me your best shot.
You know, I don't think I'm gonna tell you.
What, afraid your lies will be exposed? Yeah, I knew you'd back off. I just knew it. Yeah, an outsider you may be, but at least you know when you're bested.
No, I really do know about somewhere safe.
I mean, you just can't help yourself, can you? Go on then, fine. Go on, tell me all about it, your little safe haven.
Erden Chapel is safe.
Yeah, sorry, too sharp for that bollocks. I know a superstition when I hear one. Outsiders, even their lies are predictable.
Well, there is somewhere else I could send you.
What? Still preying on folks with your book of lies? Yeah, fine. Come on, show me what you got. Tell me about your little safe place.
Try Yusefka's clinic.
Yeah, sorry, too sharp for that bollocks. I know a superstition when I hear one. Outsiders, even their lies are predictable.
And there you have it. Note that this guy will actually go to the opposite safe haven than the one you've last told him about. But let's get down to our usual translation comparison. What are you, trying to trick me? I know, you told that whore about a shelter, didn't you? What a thoroughly stupid woman she is to believe the words of an outsider. Looks like it wasn't just her legs, but her brain that was loose too. So what were these lies you told her, dastardly outsider like you are? You want to fool me, don't you? Go on, I'll hear you out. What's wrong? Afraid your lies will be exposed? That must be it. That must be it. You may be an outsider, but I'll at least give you credit for recognizing a wise person as a wise person yourself. What? Is the liar just unable to hold it in any longer? Fine, I'll hear you out. Just where is it that's safe? Sadly for you, I'm real clever. Who would ever believe that nonsense? Honestly, that's just the sort of lie an ignorant outsider would cook up. What is it? Haven't had your fill of lying already? Go on, I'll hear you out. Just where is it that's safe? And that is quite a lot of dialogue to analyze all at once. But it also means we have a lot of material for getting a sense of this character's voice. So looking over his speech characteristics in Japanese, one of the first things that stands out to me is how little respect he shows in his speech patterns. This is something that's evident not only in his constant use of the plain form of Japanese, which is hardly unique to him, but also in the way he refers to others. Most other characters will at least refer to our character as a hunter, but this man steadfastly calls us an outsider, which is an insult for him, a liar, or he uses the term omae, which in this case is clearly being used in the rude or derisive sense it sometimes has in Japanese. And of course he also carries over this derision to Ariana, the other character who he references. At the same time, he seems to have a very high opinion of himself. Whenever he makes a first-person statement in the Japanese, he uses the term ore, one of the strongest of the many ways in which you can refer to yourself in Japanese. I've once actually had an entire character type described to me as the ore-sama character, which is basically a supremely confident and kind of arrogant character who thinks they can do no wrong. I don't think I'd classify this guy as that kind of character, but he's definitely got a high opinion of himself. This is something that also comes through in his use of the teiyaru form. He uses it in a couple different places, but perhaps one of the most notable is when he's indulging you in hearing out where there might be a safe place. The Japanese with the official translation of, yeah, fine, come on, show me what you've got. Tell me about your little safe place is, ii daro, kiite yaru ze, doko ga anzen nano kana? And the use of that teiyaru is to give the implication that he's doing you a favor by hearing you out. The fact that he also ends that sentence with the particle ze only strengthens that impression. And that leaves just one other characteristic from the Japanese that I think helps to establish the voice of this character. When he dismisses our information by saying, I know a superstition when I hear one, in the official translation, he ends the corresponding sentence in Japanese with, shinjiru mono ka. And I would say that this expression, coupled with an earlier, doku na koto ja arumai, indicate that this is an older man. Taken as a whole, we get the sense that this is a man who has a high opinion of himself, a low opinion of others, and no problem with sharing those opinions. He's also an older man, and judging by his reaction to our withholding information in particular, has a fairly caustic wit. And on the whole, I feel like the official translation does a good job of getting all this across. although I do think some of his lines end up getting softened a bit, especially in reference to Ariana. Speaking of Ariana though, I think it's high time we took a look at that blood vial she gave us. Blood of Ariana. Blood taken from Ariana, Cathedral Ward Woman of Pleasure. The sweet blood of Ariana restores HP and temporarily speeds stamina recovery. A member of the Old Healing Church would know that her blood is similar indeed to precisely what was once forbidden. Alright, now let's compare with a more literal translation. Donated blood from Ariana, prostitute of the Cathedral Ward. Her blood is sweet, and in addition to recovering HP, it increases stamina recovery speed for a set time. Perhaps an old member of the Healing Church would realize that this is very close to blood which was once stigmatized by the church. So there are a few interesting things to talk about in regards to this set of lines. First and foremost, there's something of a play on words in the original Japanese that doesn't come through very well in translation here. It involves the Japanese word kinki, which is being translated as forbidden or stigmatized. And upon looking up this word in my Daijisen Japanese dictionary, it turns out that the word has two separate meanings. The more typical one is essentially that of a taboo. It's an object or practice regarded with loathing and which is customarily avoided or forbidden. But it also has a specific medical meaning. It can mean a medical practice or medicinal compound avoided because of its detrimental effects on a human body. Given the state of the world in Bloodborne then, it's probably not too much of a leap to imagine detrimental in this case, meaning an effect that would be considered undesirable by the Healing Church. Of course, given the character limitations on the official translation, this kind of double meaning is very difficult to replicate. And if only one of those two meanings can be reproduced, then I think they made the right choice in emphasizing the fact that this blood was once forbidden. It is an interesting case where you are able to get a little bit more information from the Japanese though. The other thing I wanted to point out in relation to this item description is that it's a good example of how a small technical point can make a big difference. You may have noticed that for my more literal translation, I started one of the lines with, "Perhaps an old member of the Healing Church would realize," where the official version is, "a member of the Old Healing Church." So the point of confusion here is about where to apply the adjective old. I looked at the Japanese and applied the word old to the phrase human being of the Healing Church. The official translation seems to be looking at the Old Healing Church as a unit and a human being of as the modifier. So you have a human being of the Old Healing Church. And upon reflection, I realized that the official translation is probably the correct one here. In Japanese, the adjective furui or old generally isn't used to refer to people. But looking back on that mistake, I decided to leave it in because I thought it could lead to an interesting conversation. First, though, we're gonna check in on whoever lives in this house.
Do you hear the graveyard murmurs? Then it's almost time. Oh, I can't wait. I just can't wait.
So we'll take a quick look at that translation in just a second. First, I'd like to focus on how the simple decision of which part of a phrase is modifying what can have outsized implications. Think about it. If we're talking about an old member of the Healing Church, we've established a timeline because there would be people within living memory who know about this taboo. If we're talking about the Old Healing Church, our timeline becomes much more vague, and it implies some sort of major change to the Healing Church itself. This kind of thing can make a big difference to players anxious to dig into the lore of this game. In the world of translation, even small mistakes can have larger than expected impacts. So now let's go back and compare translations of what that woman in the house told us. Can you hear the song of the graveyard? If you can, then it won't be long now. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait, you see? And as you can tell, this is a pretty straightforward translation. The one big change would be in going from the song of the graveyard to the graveyard murmurs. Considering the creepy nature of the line, though, as well as how natural it sounds, I happen to think it gets the idea across perfectly well. And since that more or less covers just about everything I wanted to with this episode, I thought I'd finish things off with a quick update on the doll set experiment. I was planning to get a sense for different people's reactions, and depending on what they said, I thought I'd address their points in a future episode. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem like it's going to be feasible at this point. Even so, my current hope is to leave things as interactive as possible. So if you do have any thoughts you'd like to share about the translation of the doll set, please feel free to leave them in the form of a comment, and I will do my best to respond. If it turns out that nobody has any thoughts they'd care to leave, I may come back to it at some point in an episode, but since there are so many interesting aspects of translation to talk about on any given item or line of dialogue, at this point I'd say that's unlikely. That having been said, if you do have any other feedback, or if there are any particular aspects of translation you'd like me to focus on, please don't hesitate to let me know. After all, as I'm sure you're well aware of by this point, I'd love to hear any comments, questions, or suggestions you may have. As always, thanks for watching, everyone.